Hey there, welcome to Everyday Tales Audio. We're so glad you're tuning in today for a heartfelt story that's all about life's unexpected twists, those moments that tug at your heartstrings and give you hope when you least expect it. This story's called The Lucky Delivery Guy and the Beautiful Café Owner. It's about a young guy named Jake, who's been hustling to make ends meet in the sunny coastal city of San Diego, California. On his beat-up old Yamaha motorcycle, Jake zips through the busy streets, delivering orders while dreaming of a better life, one that's a little less chaotic and a little more meaningful. Amid the grind of his daily routine, fate throws him a curveball when he crosses paths with a stunning cafe owner. That chance meeting sparks a turning point in Jake's life, weaving in kindness, love, and a whole lot of grit, lighting up a path he never thought he'd walk. So, grab a coffee, get comfy, and let's dive into the full story. Jake's phone buzzed loudly, snapping him out of his thoughts as his Yamaha rumbled through the crowded food district on Palm Avenue. He couldn't pick up right away, his helmet covered most of his youthful face, and his sharp eyes stayed glued to the chaotic traffic around him, always on high alert. Folks say San Diego isn't as hectic as Los Angeles or San Francisco, but to Jake, these streets were a minefield. Sudden potholes that jolted his bike, reckless scooters weaving through traffic, and cars cutting him off without warning. As a delivery guy with 3 years under his belt, Jake had learned to navigate the busy streets like a pro, but every ride still felt like a high-stakes challenge. His next stop was a little coffee shop tucked away in a narrow alley, the kind of hidden gem only locals knew about, quiet and full of charm. The order? 2 iced black coffees, a creamy latte, and a slice of fluffy cake. But the shop owner hadn't bothered to leave any directions for the delivery guy, just a vague address that had Jake circling the block to find it. Once he tracked it down, he handed off the order quickly, slipping a $1 tip into his pocket with a small smile. It wasn't much, but that little extra felt like a pat on the back during his long, exhausting day. He glanced at his watch, 11:30 a.m. Just enough time to grab lunch before the afternoon rush, Jake thought to himself. The Lunar New Year was right around the corner, and the city was buzzing with energy, everyone rushing around, shopping and prepping for the biggest holiday of the year. For a delivery guy like Jake, it was a golden opportunity to make some extra cash, even if it meant working himself to the bone. Tired? Sure. But the money's worth it, Jake often told himself to keep going. He pulled his Yamaha up to a small noodle spot near the old market, a cozy place with a lively vibe. The tiny shop was packed, with just a few plastic tables crammed together, filled with construction workers, other delivery drivers, and office folks looking for a cheap, tasty lunch. Jake squeezed into a corner spot, calling out his order with a grin. "Hey, ma'am, can you load up the green onions on my beef noodle soup?" he asked the server, his eyes lighting up with a bit of excitement. While waiting for his food, Jake pulled out his phone to check his missed calls. 3 from the delivery company, and a text from his mom, her tone full of concern. "When are you coming home?" Jake texted back right away, his heart warming. "I'll be home by the 28th for Lunar New Year, Mom, don't worry." His bowl of noodle soup arrived, the steamy aroma wafting up and making his stomach growl. He set his phone down next to his iced water, feeling a rare moment of calm. As he picked up his chopsticks, Jake noticed a small white card sticking out from behind his phone case. He pulled it out, a little curious, and read it: Lauren Brooks, Director of Venus Spa and Wellness, with a phone number, email, and social media handle. Jake let out a soft chuckle, memories flooding back of a customer he'd met the week before. She was a young, gorgeous woman living in a fancy high-rise condo near Pacific Beach, radiating confidence and elegance. He'd delivered a package to her, a discreetly wrapped adult toy that made Jake blush bright red when he handed it over. Lauren, on the other hand, had just smiled calmly, as if it were no big deal. What stuck with him was the $50 tip she'd given him, along with slipping this card into his hand, her voice carrying a hint of mystery that left him flustered. "If you ever need a hand, just give me a call," she'd said. Jake tucked the card into his pocket, still a bit thrown off by the memory, and dug into his noodle soup. The spicy kick of chili and the tender beef melted in his mouth, giving him a rare moment of peace in his hectic day. That is, until his phone rang again, shattering the quiet. It was the company. Jake quickly slurped down the last bites, gulped the broth, and answered, his voice rushed. "This is Jake," he said, fumbling for his wallet to pay with his other hand, his stomach tightening with worry. "Got an urgent order at Ocean Towers. The customer's been waiting 20 minutes, hurry up." The dispatcher's voice was sharp, laced with frustration. "Got it, I'm on my way." Jake stuffed his phone back into his pocket, threw on his faded green delivery jacket, and raced out to his bike, his heart heavy. Another day of grind, with the pressure piling on. Ocean Towers was one of the swankiest complexes in San Diego, right by Pacific Beach, where sleek skyscrapers with modern designs and glass walls reflected the sunlight, screaming luxury, a world Jake could only admire from a distance, secretly wishing he could belong. The security guards always eyed him suspiciously, their stares cold and judgmental. Every time he showed up to make a delivery, Jake had to steel himself. "I'm delivering food to Unit 1507, he told the guard, holding up the bag of food, trying to sound confident despite the nerves. The guard nodded, jotting down his info before letting him through, his expression still icy. Jake stepped into the elevator, hitting the button for the 15th floor, his stomach doing flips. The elevator glided up smoothly, silent as a whisper, a far cry from the creaky, musty stairwell in the rundown apartment he called home. When the elevator dinged, Jake stepped out, found Unit 1507, and took a deep breath. He rang the doorbell, flashing his usual professional smile, hiding the exhaustion weighing him down. The door swung open, and Jake couldn't help but blurt out, his voice full of shock, "Sarah?" The woman standing there looked just as stunned, her eyes widening. "Jake, you're a delivery guy here?" Sarah, his old neighbor from back home, the one everyone in their small town always bragged about for marrying well and making it big in the city, stood right in front of him, leaving Jake at a loss for words. 5 years ago, when Sarah had come back to their hometown for her wedding, the whole town had been buzzing with excitement. Her groom was a successful businessman, nearly a decade older than her, but that didn't dim the glamour of their wedding, a celebration the town still talked about. "I've been working here for about 3 years now," Jake mumbled, still holding the food bag, feeling awkward and out of place. "Come on in, Jake. It's been forever, I remember when you were just a kid." Sarah smiled warmly, pulling him inside, her voice full of genuine kindness. "Let me just call the company real quick," Jake said, his heart softening at her welcome. After letting his boss know, Jake stepped into Sarah's spacious, luxurious condo, his jaw dropping quietly. The open layout had huge glass windows with a breathtaking view of Pacific Beach, the ocean sparkling under the sun. The minimalist but pricey furniture screamed sophistication without being over the top, making Jake feel like he didn't belong. "Have a seat, want something to drink?" Sarah asked, unpacking the food, her tone gentle. "Just water's fine, thanks," Jake replied, his eyes still taking in the condo, a mix of awe and envy stirring inside him. Sarah handed him a glass of water and sat across from him, her smile friendly. "So, how long have you been in the city? Why didn't you ever stop by?" "It's been 5 years now," Jake said, hesitating, a pang of guilt hitting him. "I didn't know where you lived, and work's been keeping me pretty busy. My husband, David, is always traveling for work, so it's just me here most of the time. It gets lonely," Sarah sighed, a hint of sadness in her voice. "When are you heading home for Lunar New Year?" I'm planning to go back on the 28th, Jake said, feeling a bit more at ease. What about you? David and I are heading back too, but we're waiting for him to get home first, Sarah replied, then shifted the topic, her voice softening. So, are you married yet? Jake shook his head, letting out a small, self-deprecating laugh. Nah, I can barely afford to take care of myself. Sarah hesitated, her eyes clouding with sadness, her tone heavy. To be honest, David and I don't have kids yet. The air suddenly felt thick, and Jake felt a wave of awkwardness wash over him. He didn't know what to say, so he just took a sip of water, his mind racing. David and I have been married for 9 years, but we still don't have a child, Sarah continued, her voice trembling with emotion. We've been to doctors everywhere, here and abroad. Finally, they told us David can't have kids. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks, and Jake felt his heart ache for her, but he was at a loss for words, fumbling for something to say. Sarah, I'm so sorry, but science is amazing these days. I'm sure there's a way to help you guys, Jake said, trying to comfort her, though his voice sounded clumsy. Sarah wiped her tears, then suddenly placed her hand on Jake's, her eyes pleading. Jake, can you help me with something? Sure, what is it? Jake asked, a knot of worry forming in his chest. Would you help me have a baby? Her request hit Jake like a lightning bolt, leaving him stunned, his mind reeling. Before he could even process it, Sarah's phone rang, cutting through the tense silence. She answered quickly, her voice urgent. David's almost home. Just wait a sec, I need to talk to him, Sarah said firmly. Jake wanted to make an excuse to leave, his thoughts in chaos, but Sarah held him back, her grip tight. I need you here, Jake, please stay. Her desperate, pleading eyes made it impossible for him to say no. David, Sarah's husband, walked in, a confident man with the sharp gaze Jake had seen in successful entrepreneurs. He looked surprised to see Jake, but Sarah quickly pulled him into another room, leaving Jake alone with his spiraling thoughts. Jake sat there, his heart pounding, anxiety creeping in. He glanced at his watch. 30 minutes had passed since they'd gone into the room. His phone kept buzzing with missed calls from work, adding to his stress. Finally, the door opened. David stepped out first, his eyes red and emotional, followed by Sarah in a similar state, the tension in the air suffocating Jake. Jake, thanks for waiting, David said, his voice hoarse with emotion. Sarah told me about her request, David continued, making Jake swallow hard, unsure of what to say, his mind a mess. I know it sounds strange, David said, his tone heavy, but Sarah and I have talked about this for a long time. This isn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. I don't know what to say, Jake stammered, his heart racing, avoiding their gazes. All I want is a child, David said, looking Jake straight in the eye, his voice raw with sincerity. A child to carry on our family, to let Sarah be a mother. For 9 years, we've tried everything. Sarah's voice broke as she added, if you agree, we'd be forever grateful. Jake sat in silence for a long moment, his mind swirling with 1,000 thoughts, torn in every direction. Finally, he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. I'll help, he said quietly, his voice trembling. Sarah burst into tears, gripping Jake's hand tightly, her tears streaming down her face, full of gratitude. David turned away, maybe to hide his own tears, his heart heavy with emotion. I need to step out for a bit, David said, his voice shaky, before quickly leaving the condo, leaving behind a heavy silence. 2 hours later, Jake walked out of Ocean Towers, his mind a whirlwind of complicated feelings, his heart weighed down by what had just happened. He felt like he'd just stepped into something way bigger, way more complex than he could fully wrap his head around, and it left him rattled. David had come back to the condo just before Jake left, handing him a thick envelope, his voice sincere. "This isn't payment," he'd said, "this is our gratitude." Jake had tried to refuse, but David insisted. "Take it, think of it as a Lunar New Year gift," he'd said, his eyes full of genuine appreciation. Now, sitting on his Yamaha, Jake opened the envelope, his jaw dropping in shock. Inside was a stack of cash in crisp US dollars, probably more than he'd make in a whole year, leaving him stunned. His phone buzzed again, snapping him out of it. It was the company. He answered, and just as he'd feared, he got the news. He'd been fired for neglecting his job for too long without checking in, his stomach sinking with disappointment. "Sorry, but rules are rules. You can come by the office next week to pick up your last paycheck," the cold voice on the other end said, making Jake's heart ache for a moment. But strangely, he didn't feel as crushed as he thought he would. Maybe it was time for a change, a fresh start to break free from the exhausting grind he'd been stuck in. Jake pulled over at a small coffee shop, plopped down at a table, and ordered an iced black coffee. He pulled out Lauren's business card, staring at it intently, his mind racing with possibilities. Then, on a sudden impulse, he grabbed his phone and dialed her number, his heart pounding. "Lauren speaking." Her warm, calm voice came through the line, making Jake's pulse quicken. "Hey, Lauren, it's Jake, the delivery guy who dropped off your package last week," he said, his voice a little hesitant. "Oh, hey, Jake." Lauren's tone brightened, full of friendliness. "What's up?" I just lost my job," Jake admitted, his words coming out slowly. "You mentioned if I ever needed help, I should call you." "Perfect timing." Lauren replied instantly, her voice brimming with excitement. "I'm actually looking for someone. Are you free tonight? Let's meet up at the coffee shop across from my building," she suggested. "Yeah, I'll be there," Jake replied, a flicker of hope sparking inside him, like a light breaking through a dark day. The coffee shop where Jake and Lauren agreed to meet was a cozy little spot tucked away on a corner with a view of the shimmering Pacific Ocean. Jake arrived 10 minutes early, picking a quiet table in the back, his nerves buzzing. He ordered an iced coffee with cream and sat waiting, his gaze drifting out to the horizon, lost in thought. Right at 7 p.m., Lauren walked in, her presence lighting up the room. Unlike last time when she'd been in casual loungewear, tonight she was dressed in a sleek, professional dress, her hair falling loosely over her shoulders, her makeup subtle but polished. Even in her mid-30s, her beauty turned heads, captivating everyone around her. "You're early," Lauren said with a warm smile, sliding into the seat across from Jake, her eyes kind. "Yeah, old habits from the job," Jake replied, a bit flustered, his cheeks flushing slightly. Lauren ordered a hot chamomile tea, then turned to Jake, her voice gentle. "So, what happened? How'd you lose your job?" Jake recounted the day's events, leaving out the part about Sarah and David. He wasn't ready to revisit that yet. He just mentioned running into an old friend and talking too long, which led to the fallout at work. "So, what's your next move?" Lauren asked, sipping her tea, her eyes curious. "I'm not sure yet. Maybe I'll look for another job after Lunar New Year," Jake answered honestly, his tone uncertain. "What if you came to work for me?" Lauren offered, her voice confident. "I need a manager for my spa. It's not too complicated, mostly greeting clients, scheduling appointments, and overseeing the staff." Jake blinked, caught off guard, his mind spinning. "But I don't have any experience with that kind of stuff." "That's okay," Lauren said with a reassuring smile, her eyes full of trust. "I'll train you. What matters is that you're honest, hardworking, and reliable. The rest, you can learn as you go." But why trust me? We've only met once, Jake asked, his voice tinged with doubt, his brow furrowing. Lauren looked at him, her gaze steady, almost appraising. I've got a good feeling about you. In business, sometimes you have to trust your gut, she said warmly. Jake didn't know how to respond, his emotions a tangled mix of surprise and gratitude. The offer was unexpected, but it felt like a door opening to something new, something exciting. What about your divorce? Jake blurted out, then immediately regretted it, his face turning red with embarrassment. But Lauren didn't seem bothered. She let out a soft sigh, her voice tinged with a hint of sadness. My ex-husband cheated on me with his secretary. I found out and decided to end it. That's all there is to it. I'm sorry for asking, Jake said, his voice full of regret. It's fine, Lauren replied with a gentle smile. That's in the past now. I'm doing great, my business is thriving, and I'm free to live life on my terms. Their conversation flowed easily, touching on all sorts of topics, and Jake was surprised to find how much they had in common. They both loved mystery movies, shared a passion for spicy Cajun food, like the gumbo they both craved, and had a mutual love for spontaneous road trips, the kind where you just hit the open road with no plan. When the clock struck 9 p.m., Lauren looked at Jake with a warm, meaningful gaze. It's getting late. Want to swing by my place for a bit? I've got some work stuff I'd like to show you. Jake knew this wasn't just about work papers, but after a day full of upheaval, he felt like he wasn't the same Jake from yesterday, he was ready for something new. Sure, I'll come, he said, his voice steady, a spark of determination in his eyes. Lauren's apartment was in a mid-range complex, not as fancy as Sarah's, but still comfortable, decorated with a refined sense of style that left Jake quietly impressed. The first thing he noticed was how tidy and well-organized everything was, reflecting Lauren's strong, vibrant personality. Have a seat, Lauren said, gesturing to a soft gray couch, her tone welcoming. Want something to drink? Just water, thanks, Jake replied, his eyes wandering around the space, a mix of admiration and curiosity in his gaze. Lauren handed him a glass of water and sat down next to him, closer than he expected, making him a little nervous. What do you think of my place? She asked, her eyes bright. It's really nice, feels like it's got your personality all over it, Jake said honestly, his voice full of appreciation. Lauren smiled, her expression glowing. I live alone, so I wanted to make it a space that feels cozy and true to who I am. She stood up, grabbed a folder from a drawer, and handed it to Jake, her tone soft. Here's some info about the spa. You can take a look to get a better idea of the job. Jake flipped through the pages, price lists, procedures, staff structure, all laid out in a professional, detailed way that impressed him. Your spa's bigger than I thought, he remarked, his voice tinged with surprise. It took me 7 years to build it up, Lauren said, her voice full of pride. Started with a tiny spot and 3 employees, and now we've got 2 locations with over 20 staff. As Jake focused on the documents, Lauren suddenly placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice soft. You know, I liked you the moment we met. Jake looked up, meeting her gaze, her eyes full of meaning, making his heart race. There's something special about you, she continued, her voice lowering, not just how you look, but the way you see the world. I don't think I'm anything special, Jake stammered, his face flushing bright red. Lauren let out a soft laugh, her eyes warm. That's exactly what makes you special, your humility, your sincerity. She leaned in closer, her light perfume filling the air, overwhelming Jake with a rush of emotions, his heart in chaos. They were so close they could almost touch, the air thick with tension. Would you like to stay the night? Lauren asked directly, her voice magnetic. Her straightforward offer caught Jake off guard, but deep down, he'd half expected it, his emotions a tangled mess. So much had happened today, completely shifting how he saw himself and his life. "Yes," he replied, his answer short but loaded with meaning, a determined glint in his eyes. That night, Jake stayed at Lauren's apartment. What surprised him was that it wasn't just about the physical connection. They shared deep, meaningful conversations about life, dreams, and the future, warming Jake's heart in a way he hadn't expected. Lauren opened up about her past, how she'd moved to the city from a small town, worked her way up in the beauty industry, survived a messy marriage, and finally built her own empire, her voice brimming with pride. "I've always believed women need to be financially and emotionally independent," she said firmly, lying next to Jake in the dim light. "That's when we truly take control of our lives." Jake felt a newfound admiration for her, not just for her beauty or charm, but for the strength and resilience beneath her soft exterior, leaving him in awe. The next morning, Jake woke up in an unfamiliar room, sunlight slipping through the blinds, casting a gentle glow. Lauren wasn't beside him, which threw him off for a moment. He sat up, hearing faint noises from the kitchen, a wave of relief washing over him. He got dressed and stepped out, curious. Lauren was preparing breakfast, toast, sunny-side-up eggs, and coffee, the aroma filling the space with warmth. "Morning," she said with a bright smile when she saw Jake, her eyes sparkling. "Sleep well?" "Yeah, really well," Jake replied, a bit shy, his cheeks tinged pink. "You're up early." "Habit," she said with a grin. "I always start my day early to get a jump on things." She set the plates on the table, her voice soft. "Let's eat. Then I'll take you to the spa." They ate breakfast in a surprisingly comfortable atmosphere, like they'd known each other forever, which caught Jake off guard. Afterward, they headed to Venus Spa and Wellness in Lauren's sleek white Mercedes, the luxurious vibe adding to Jake's growing excitement. "Today, I'll introduce you to the team," Lauren said as they drove, her voice full of enthusiasm. "If you decide to work with me, you can start after Lunar New Year." "I'm really looking forward to it," Jake said, nodding, a fresh wave of excitement bubbling inside him. Venus Spa and Wellness was located on a bustling street in San Diego, its modern, elegant design catching the eye. A glowing Venus logo stood out front, shining under the morning sun, radiating sophistication. Lauren led Jake inside, introducing him to the staff, who all greeted him with friendly, welcoming smiles, making him feel at ease, his heart warming. Jake got a full tour of the place, from the bright reception area and cozy consultation rooms to the state-of-the-art treatment and surgery suites. "Pretty impressive, huh?" Lauren asked when they finished, her eyes twinkling. "Super impressive. It's way more professional than I expected," Jake said honestly, his voice full of admiration. As they returned to the reception area, a staff member rushed over, her tone urgent. "Lauren, we've got a client booked for a nose consultation, but the specialist is off today. Can you take the session?" "Sure." Lauren nodded, then turned to Jake, her voice soft. "Wait here for me, okay? Or you can watch and learn more about the job." "I'll watch," Jake said, eager to understand more about this new world, his heart buzzing with curiosity. Lauren led him into a small consultation room where the client was waiting. But the moment the door opened, Jake froze, his mind reeling in shock. The client sitting there was Sarah. "Jake?" Sarah exclaimed, her eyes wide with surprise. "What are you doing here?" Lauren glanced between the two, her tone curious. "You guys know each other?" "Yeah, this is Sarah, my old neighbor from back home," Jake stammered, feeling like he'd stumbled into some kind of surreal situation, his heart racing. "And this is..." Sarah looked at Lauren, waiting for an introduction. "I'm Lauren's new employee," Jake blurted out quickly, not wanting to reveal the real nature of his relationship with Lauren, his stomach knotting with nerves. Lauren raised an eyebrow at Jake but didn't say anything, though her eyes flickered with a hint of suspicion. She turned to Sarah, her voice professional. "So, you're here to talk about a nose consultation, right?" As Lauren and Sarah discussed the cosmetic procedure, Jake stood off to the side, his mind a chaotic mess, his chest tight with unease. He couldn't believe that the two women who'd come into his life in just one day were now in the same room, the coincidence making him feel suffocated. "I need to step outside for a bit," Jake finally said, his voice rushed, unable to handle the tense atmosphere any longer. He walked out, taking a deep breath, his heart heavy. How does life get this messy? He wondered, shaking his head. Jake pulled out his phone, glancing at the calendar, his mind heavy with emotion. It was just 2 days until the 28th, the day he'd planned to head home for Lunar New Year. A sudden decision formed in his mind, like an escape hatch. He made a quick call, his voice urgent. "Hey, this is the San Diego bus station. What's the earliest bus to Willow Creek tomorrow morning?" 6 a.m., the operator replied. "Great, book me a ticket," Jake said, hanging up, a wave of relief washing over him. Sometimes, running away is the best option, Jake thought to himself. He didn't go back to the spa, his resolve firm. Instead, he sent Lauren a text, his tone hesitant. "Hey Lauren, I've got to head home early, family stuff came up." It wasn't entirely a lie, he did need to go home, even if the real reason was to escape the tangled mess his life had become, his heart exhausted from the chaos. Lauren tried calling him a few times, but Jake didn't pick up, guilt gnawing at him. Eventually, she sent a text, her tone gentle. "I understand, take care of your family stuff. Call me when you're ready." Sarah tried reaching out too, but Jake avoided her calls as well, needing space to clear his head. He needed to find himself again after the whirlwind of events that had turned his world upside down. The next morning, Jake was at the San Diego bus station bright and early, his emotions a tangled mix. He carried a small backpack with a few clothes and the envelope of cash from David, his eyes tinged with sadness. Everything else, he left behind in his rundown apartment, the cheap belongings that had been part of his life for years, like memories he was ready to let go of. The bus rolled over the Coronado Bridge, leaving San Diego's glittering skyline behind. Jake gazed out the window, watching the ocean sparkle under the early morning sun, a pang of nostalgia hitting him. For 5 years, he'd lived and worked in this city, but it had never truly felt like home, a place where his heart belonged. Home was a small town called Willow Creek in rural California, a quiet place with rolling green fields, quaint houses tucked under ancient oak trees, and memories of his childhood around every corner. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, like one big family. The sound of roosters crowing at dawn, the chirping of crickets at night, these were the familiar sounds that stirred a deep longing in Jake's heart. He got off the bus at a small junction and hopped on the back of a motorcycle taxi to head straight to his village, his excitement building. The driver was Uncle Pete, a family friend with a familiar, comforting presence. "Well, look who it is, Jake." Uncle Pete called out when he recognized him, his eyes lighting up. "I thought you were coming tomorrow." "That's what your mom said." "I came a day early," Jake replied with a warm smile, his voice soft. "Work in the city's done, so I headed straight back." Good, good." Uncle Pete nodded, grinning. "You're here early to help your mom get ready for Lunar New Year, huh? It's gonna be a big celebration this year, we've even got a lion dance troupe coming to perform." They chatted the whole ride back to the village, the easy conversation lifting Jake's spirits. He was surprised to see how much his hometown had changed. The dirt roads were now paved smooth, new houses had popped up, looking sturdy and modern, and there were even a few cute little coffee shops where the younger crowd hung out. "Wow, the town's really coming up, huh?" Jake asked, his voice full of amazement, his eyes shining. "Yep. Ever since the local tourism project started, folks from outside have been investing here. A lot of the young people stopped leaving for the city. They're staying to work on traditional crafts or help out with the tourists," Uncle Pete explained, his tone enthusiastic. "Your family's doing better too. Your mom opened a little souvenir shop for the visitors, and I hear she's making decent money." Jake smiled, a weight lifting off his shoulders. That explained why, in their recent calls, his mom kept saying everything was fine and that he didn't need to send money home anymore. It eased a burden he'd been carrying. The motorcycle pulled up in front of a modest house with a red-tiled roof, surrounded by a fence of vibrant hibiscus flowers, bright as a postcard. This was Jake's home, the place where he'd grown up until he left at 18, filled with memories that warmed his heart. "Here we are," Jake said, paying Uncle Pete, his voice full of gratitude. "Thanks, Uncle Pete." "No need to thank me." Uncle Pete chuckled, his eyes kind. "Just swing by my place during the new year for a drink, that's thanks enough." He drove off, leaving Jake with a comforting sense of familiarity. Jake pushed open the wooden gate and stepped into the yard, the familiar scent of hibiscus and freshly cut grass filling the air, stirring his emotions. He heard noises from inside and called out, his voice brimming with excitement. "Mom, I'm home." The door flew open, and Jake's mom, Linda, rushed out, her face a mix of surprise and joy, her eyes welling up. "Oh my goodness, you're back early. I thought you were coming tomorrow." She wrapped Jake in a tight hug, tears rolling down her cheeks, her voice choked with happiness. "I wanted to come back early to help you get ready for Lunar New Year," Jake said, hugging her back, a deep warmth spreading through him. "I'm so happy," Linda said, pulling him inside, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Your dad's at a neighborhood meeting, he'll be back this afternoon. Let me make your favorite, fish stew with a little tang, just how you like it." Jake stepped into the house, his eyes widening at how much had changed. A new TV, new furniture, even a fridge and a washing machine, things his family couldn't afford before, leaving him in awe. "Wow, the house looks so different now," Jake said, unable to hide his surprise, his eyes sparkling. Linda smiled, her voice proud. "I told you things were going well. The town's tourism has really taken off, lots of folks come to see our local crafts. I started selling souvenirs and drinks at a little shop, and it's been doing pretty good. Plus, your dad got picked as the neighborhood association leader, so he's got a small pension now too." Jake felt like a huge weight had been lifted, his heart lighter. For the past year, he'd been stressed, thinking he had to keep sending money home to support his parents. Now he realized they were doing just fine. "Mom." Jake hesitated, his voice low, a flicker of worry in his eyes. I lost my job." Linda paused, looking at her son, her expression softening with concern. "What happened, sweetie?" Jake explained how he'd been let go for slacking off at work, leaving out the messy details, a pang of guilt hitting him. He braced himself for her to be worried or upset, but Linda just gave him a gentle smile, her eyes kind. "That's okay, honey. There are plenty of jobs in the city. Or, what if you stayed here with us? The town's growing so much now, you could open a coffee shop, or even work as a tour guide." Jake was caught off guard by the suggestion, his heart stirring. He'd never seriously thought about moving back home, but the idea sparked something in him, making him wonder. "I'll think about it," he replied, his voice thoughtful. That afternoon, when Jake's dad, Henry, got back, the family gathered for a warm, cozy dinner, the air filled with happiness. Henry shared stories about the changes in town, the new tourism project, and the opportunities it brought, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. "If you want to stay here, I can help you get a loan to open a little coffee shop," Henry offered, his eyes full of hope. The town could use a spot for tourists to relax and grab a drink. A modern cafe with a traditional vibe would draw a lot of people. Jake listened, his mind settling, a wave of emotion washing over him. Maybe this was his chance to start fresh, to leave behind the complications and messy relationships in the city that had left him drained. "I'll think about it," Jake said, this time with more sincerity, a determined glint in his eyes. That evening, after dinner, Jake took a walk around the town, his heart feeling lighter. He ran into old friends and familiar faces from his school days, memories flooding back. To his surprise, a lot of them had moved back to Willow Creek to live and work, instead of leaving for the city like they used to. Mike, a buddy from his high school class, had opened a small pottery workshop and was doing pretty well for himself, leaving Jake impressed. "I worked in LA for 2 years, Mike said, his voice steady. "But I realized city life wasn't for me. Sure, I might not make as much money here, but life's so much more peaceful." Jake nodded, feeling a deep connection, a warmth spreading through him. "You thinking about moving back?" Mike asked, his eyes curious. "I'm considering it," Jake replied, his tone reflective. "My dad suggested opening a coffee shop." "That's a great idea. We could use a decent cafe around here. If you need any help, just let me know," Mike said with a grin, his sincerity making Jake feel supported. Jake kept walking, eventually stopping by the small creek that ran through town, a sense of calm washing over him. He sat down on the grassy bank, watching the water shimmer under the moonlight, the soft glow soothing his soul. When was the last time he'd sat here? Probably the night before he left for the city, 5 years ago, the memory hitting him hard, stirring his emotions. He pulled out his phone, noticing a bunch of missed calls and texts, mostly from Lauren and Sarah, a flicker of unease creeping in. The latest message from Lauren was gentle. "Jake, I know you need time, but don't miss out on this opportunity. Call me when you're back from home." Sarah's message was more anxious. "Jake, I don't understand why you disappeared like that. I need to talk to you, it's important." Jake sighed, turning off his phone, his heart heavy. He lay back on the grass, staring up at the star-filled sky, the twinkling lights stirring something deep inside him. In the city, he rarely saw stars because of the lights and smog. Here, the peace felt almost magical. "Maybe this is where I really belong," Jake thought to himself, a wave of emotion swelling in his chest. The next few days passed in the lively buzz of the town as everyone prepared for Lunar New Year, filling Jake with a warmth he hadn't felt in ages. He helped his parents clean the house, shop for holiday decorations, and prep traditional foods, his heart brimming with a simple joy he'd almost forgotten, the joy of being with family, of sinking back into the rhythm of small-town life. Every morning, Jake woke up to the sound of roosters and the smoky scent of the wood stove, his heart light. He went with his dad to the local market, picking out flowers like peach blossoms and marigolds to decorate the house, the festive vibe lifting his spirits. He helped his mom wrap sticky rice dumplings, make candied ginger, and pickle onions, tasks that seemed so ordinary but brought him an unexpected sense of peace, warming his heart. 2 days before the new year, Jake and his dad went to check out an empty lot near the town market, excitement bubbling inside him. The spot they were checking out was an old house up for rent, perfectly located to open a coffee shop, sparking excitement in Jake. "What do you think?" Henry asked as they stood in front of the property, his eyes full of hope. "It's a great spot, Dad." Jake nodded, his voice enthusiastic. "But it needs a lot of fixing up." "No problem. We've got plenty of good handymen around here, and it won't cost as much as it would in the city," Henry said with a reassuring smile, his tone encouraging. They talked to the owner, negotiating the price and terms, and everything went smoother than Jake had expected. "If you decide to open the shop, I'll cover a quarter of the cost," Henry said as they walked back home, his voice firm. "You can get a low-interest loan for young entrepreneurs to cover the rest." Jake nodded, a thrill running through him at the thought of running his own coffee shop, his heart buzzing with possibilities. He started picturing the place in his mind, an open space blending modern vibes with traditional touches, decorated with local artwork and pottery, creating a cozy, welcoming feel. That evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, the doorbell rang, breaking the warm atmosphere. Linda got up to answer it, then called back, her voice tinged with surprise. "Jake, someone's here for you." Jake frowned, curious, not expecting any visitors in Willow Creek. He stepped out into the yard and froze when he saw Lauren standing there, dressed casually but still radiating an effortless elegance, leaving him stunned. "Lauren." Jake stammered, his eyes wide. "You weren't answering my calls or texts, so I had to come find you myself," Lauren said, her tone half teasing, half serious, her eyes sparkling. "How'd you even know where I live?" Jake asked, still reeling from the surprise, his mind racing. "You forgot you told me the name of your town, didn't you?" "I just asked around a little, it wasn't hard to find you," Lauren replied with a light laugh, her voice gentle. Linda stepped out, her hospitality shining through. "Come on in and join us for dinner." "Thank you so much, ma'am," Lauren said with a polite smile, her demeanor warm. They went inside, and Lauren was introduced to Henry. She smoothly explained that she was Jake's friend, someone he'd met through work in the city, her tone natural. Over dinner, Lauren fit right in, her friendliness and manners warming up the room. She listened attentively as Henry shared stories about Willow Creek, asking thoughtful questions that showed genuine interest, winning over the whole family. Linda clearly took a liking to this beautiful, polite young woman, her eyes glowing with approval. After dinner, Jake took Lauren for a walk around town, his emotions swirling. The moon hung high, casting a soft glow over the quiet streets, giving the scene a dreamy feel. The chirping of crickets mixed with the rustling of leaves, creating a familiar nighttime melody that soothed Jake's soul. "Your town's really beautiful," Lauren said as they passed a field of tall grass, her voice full of admiration. "So different from the rush of the city. Why'd you come all the way out here?" Jake finally asked, his voice low, the question weighing on his mind. Lauren stopped walking, turning to face him, her expression serious. "I wanted to know why you disappeared like that." "I'm sorry," Jake sighed, his voice heavy with guilt. "I just needed time to think, everything happened so fast, Lauren." She nodded, her eyes softening with understanding. "I get it, but you can't keep running away forever, Jake." They walked in silence for a bit, the air feeling a little heavy, then Lauren spoke again, her tone gentle. "My job offer still stands. You don't have to decide right now, just think it over." I'm actually thinking about staying here," Jake admitted, his voice hesitant. "Opening a little coffee shop." Lauren looked surprised but didn't object, her eyes full of empathy. "If that's what you really want, I'll support you." They reached the creek, the spot where Jake had been coming to sit alone these past few days, a place that brought him peace. They sat down on the grassy bank, gazing at the calm water reflecting the moonlight, the soft glow adding a magical touch to the moment. "But is that really what you want, Jake?" Lauren asked softly, her voice full of care. "Or are you just running away?" Her question hit a nerve, stirring up thoughts Jake had been trying to avoid, leaving him unsettled. He stayed quiet for a long moment before answering, his voice low. "I don't know, my head's a mess right now." "I don't want to pressure you," Lauren said, placing a hand on his shoulder, her tone gentle. But I want you to know I really care about you, not just because of the job." Their eyes met in a rare moment of raw honesty, and Jake could feel the sincerity in her words, a warmth spreading through him. "Also," Lauren continued, her voice lowering, "Sarah's been looking for you." Hearing Sarah's name sent a wave of unease through Jake, his eyes flickering with worry. "Did she say anything to you?" "Not much, just that she needs to talk to you urgently." "It seems pretty important," Lauren replied, her tone soft. Jake sighed, looking up at the starry sky, his expression heavy with emotion. "I don't know how to face her." "You can't keep avoiding her forever, Jake," Lauren said gently, her voice encouraging. "Sooner or later, you'll have to face the choices you've made," she added, her words soft but meaningful, making Jake's heart sink a little. They sat together in silence, letting the words and thoughts settle, the quiet night filled only with the gentle trickle of the creek and the breeze rustling through the trees, a soothing melody that eased Jake's soul. The next morning, as Jake was helping his dad tidy up the yard, a fancy car pulled up in front of the house, catching him off guard, his stomach tightening with nerves. Jake was stunned to see David and Sarah step out of the car, their familiar faces bringing a wave of unexpected emotions. "Hey, Jake," David said, his voice warm, his eyes sincere. "We came to visit you." Jake stood there, his mind a jumble, unsure how to react to their sudden appearance. Sarah stood beside her husband, her eyes carrying a complex mix of emotions, hinting at something deeper. "Come on in," Jake finally managed, his voice hesitant, as Henry stepped forward to greet the guests with a welcoming smile. Inside, Linda hurriedly tidied up and brought out some tea for the visitors, the atmosphere warming up. Henry and David quickly hit it off, chatting easily, their voices lively and friendly. Meanwhile, Sarah stayed quiet, occasionally glancing at Jake, her eyes heavy with unspoken thoughts, making him feel on edge. "I heard you're thinking about opening a coffee shop here," David said, catching Jake off guard, his eyes widening. "Yeah, I'm considering it," Jake replied, his tone cautious, his mind racing with questions. "I think that's a fantastic idea," David said, his voice enthusiastic. "I've got some connections with high-quality coffee suppliers. If you need, I can hook you up." Jake couldn't figure out why David was being so friendly and supportive, his suspicion growing. He glanced at Sarah, noticing her soft smile, her eyes gentle, which eased his nerves a little. After chatting for a while, David suggested, his tone more serious, "Jake, can we talk privately?" They stepped out to the backyard, where a stone table sat under the shade of an old oak tree, the air calm and peaceful. David took a seat, gesturing for Jake to sit across from him, his eyes earnest. "I know you're wondering why we're here," David began, his voice steady. "We actually have some good news to share." Jake looked at him, his curiosity piqued, waiting. "Sarah's pregnant," David said, unable to hide the joy in his voice, his eyes lighting up. "We've been to the doctor, and it's confirmed." A wave of mixed emotions hit Jake, surprise, happiness, but also something he couldn't quite name, stirring his heart. That's amazing news," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, though his emotions were all over the place. "You have no idea what this means to us," David continued, his eyes misty, his voice thick with emotion. 9 years of waiting, and finally. I can't even begin to express how grateful we are." Jake nodded, unsure what else to say, his feelings a tangled mess. "Sarah really wanted to talk to you. She was worried when you disappeared," David said, his tone sincere. "Could you take a moment to speak with her?" "Of course," Jake agreed, his voice soft, a flicker of anxiety in his chest. David gave Jake a reassuring pat on the shoulder before heading back inside, leaving him with a swirl of thoughts. A moment later, Sarah came out, taking David's seat, her eyes gentle but carrying a weight of emotion. "You didn't have to run off like that, Jake," she said right away, her voice full of concern. "I was so worried." "I'm sorry," Jake replied, his tone apologetic, his gaze dropping. "I just needed time to process everything." "I understand," Sarah nodded, her eyes softening. "But I wanted to tell you that David and I will never forget what you did for us." "It's not a debt," Jake said firmly. "I just wanted to help you guys." Sarah smiled, tears welling up, her eyes full of gratitude. "I know. That's why I want to help you." "Do you have any dreams, Jake?" "David and I want to support you in making them come true." I'm planning to open a coffee shop here," Jake said after a brief pause, his voice thoughtful. "That's a wonderful idea," Sarah exclaimed, her voice lighting up with excitement. "David can help with the financial side and connect you with suppliers. You won't have to worry about the startup costs," she added, her eyes shining. Jake didn't know what to say. Their enthusiasm and sincerity touched him, but it also made him feel a little uneasy, his emotions conflicted. "Thank you," he finally said, his voice genuine. "But I want to do this on my own. I might need some advice and a little help to get started, but I want to stand on my own 2 feet." Sarah nodded, clearly understanding and respecting his choice, her eyes warm with empathy. "I get it. But just know that if you ever need anything, David and I are here for you." They talked a bit more about the coffee shop plans and what the future might hold, the conversation lightening up. When they went back inside, Jake saw David and Henry deep in conversation, hitting it off, while Linda and Lauren were chatting happily in the corner, a warmth spreading through him. Seeing everyone together like this, Jake felt a strange sense of peace wash over him, his heart feeling lighter. Maybe things weren't as complicated as he'd thought. Maybe sometimes life threw you unexpected twists, but they led to something better than you could have imagined, making him smile softly. That Lunar New Year became one of Jake's most cherished memories. He didn't just reunite with his family but gained new friends in Lauren, David, and Sarah, filling his heart with joy. They celebrated the new year together, joining the town's festivities, visiting the local temple, and taking part in community events, the atmosphere lively and warm. After the holiday, Jake decided to stay in Willow Creek, determined to make his coffee shop dream a reality, his resolve stronger than ever. He named the shop Blue Haven, after the little creek that ran through town, a place tied to so many childhood memories that tugged at his heart every time he thought of it. David, while not investing directly, helped Jake connect with top-notch coffee suppliers and introduced him to some business folks with expertise in tourism, something Jake was deeply grateful for. Sarah popped by occasionally, helping Jake decorate the shop with creative ideas that made the space feel even cozier. Lauren, after heading back to San Diego, kept in touch with Jake regularly, her heart always tied to him. Lauren started visiting Willow Creek on weekends, sometimes bringing along clients from her spa to explore the small town and enjoy coffee at Jake's shop, adding a lively buzz to the place. "You know," Lauren said to Jake one day as they sat by the creek, her eyes soft, "I thought you'd end up coming back to the city to work with me. But now I see, this is where you truly belong." Jake smiled, his eyes shining with sincerity, his voice warm. "I never thought I'd move back home either. But I realized happiness isn't out there somewhere, it's in the familiar, the things closest to you. Your coffee shop's getting busier every day." Lauren noted, her voice brimming with pride. "I've seen so many city folks coming out here just to sip coffee and take in the small-town views." "I owe you a huge thanks," Jake said, his tone heartfelt. "If you hadn't brought your clients out here, the shop wouldn't have taken off so fast." Lauren shook her head, her gaze gentle. "It's not because of me. It's your talent and passion that made this a success." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the sun dip below the oak trees, the peaceful, familiar air wrapping around them, filling Jake with a deep sense of happiness, his heart warm. "Do you think there could be a future for us?" Lauren asked suddenly, her voice as soft as a breeze, her eyes full of quiet hope. Jake turned to her, a little surprised by the unexpected question, his heart beating faster. The sincerity and longing in Lauren's eyes stirred something deep inside him. "I think there could be," he finally said, his voice steady and warm. "If you're okay with a small-town guy like me." Lauren smiled, her eyes lighting up, her voice tender. "I've never met anyone as genuine and dependable as you, Jake." They held hands, watching the sunset cast a golden glow over the peaceful town, the warm light painting the scene in hues of orange and amber. In that moment, Jake knew his life had taken a completely new direction, one he'd never imagined, but one that brought him a deeper happiness than he'd ever dreamed of, his heart swelling with emotion. 6 months later, Blue Haven had become a favorite spot not just for the locals but for tourists from all over, filling Jake with pride. He'd expanded the shop, adding a small area to display and sell handmade crafts from the town, giving the space even more meaning. One busy Saturday afternoon, Jake was surprised to see Sarah and David walk in, along with Lauren, his heart racing with excitement. Sarah, now 6 months pregnant, glowed with beauty and joy, her eyes sparkling with happiness. "We've got some exciting news to share," David said after they settled at a quiet table in the corner, his voice buzzing with enthusiasm. "What's the news?" Jake asked, his curiosity piqued, his eyes eager. "We're moving here," Sarah announced, her voice radiant with happiness. "David just got a job offer with a big tourism company in Santa Barbara. We bought a piece of land nearby to build a house," Sarah continued, her eyes shining. "No way," Jake said, his heart flooding with joy. "That's incredible news. And there's more," David added, his voice brimming with excitement. "We found out the baby's gender, it's a boy. Congratulations," Jake said, his voice warm with genuine happiness. "Your baby's going to be healthy and smart, I just know it." "Thank you." Sarah smiled, her eyes full of gratitude. "We've decided to name him Jake Tyler, after you." A wave of emotion crashed over Jake, his eyes welling up with tears. He hadn't expected Sarah and David to honor him like this, his heart swelling with a mix of joy and disbelief. I don't know what to say," Jake said, his voice trembling, overcome with emotion. "It's such an honor." David shook his head, his eyes sincere. "The honor's ours, being friends with someone like you." Lauren, sitting beside Jake, squeezed his hand under the table, a quiet gesture of support that warmed his heart even more. "And I've got some news too," Lauren chimed in, her voice gentle. "I'm opening a new spa branch in Santa Barbara, so I'll be around here a lot more." Jake turned to Lauren, unable to hide his happiness, his eyes glowing. "Really?" "Really," Lauren nodded, her smile soft. "I thought about it a lot. It's not just good for business, but I also want to be closer to you." Sarah and David exchanged a knowing smile, their eyes full of support for the two of them. "Let's raise a toast," David suggested, lifting his coffee cup, his voice full of cheer. "To friendship, to the future, and to new beginnings." The 4 coffee cups clinked together, the sound ringing out in the cozy shop, filling Jake's heart with pure happiness. He looked around at the familiar faces, his heart brimming with joy. From a nobody delivery guy on the streets of San Diego, he'd found his place, a little coffee shop in a peaceful small town, surrounded by loved ones and the special friends fate had brought into his life, stirring deep emotions within him. Through the shop's window, Jake could see the rolling green fields and the winding creek, the sunset casting a warm golden glow over the scene. "This is home," where I belong, Jake thought, his heart full. On his journey to find himself, he'd learned that sometimes the right path comes through life's most unexpected turns, and those turns lead to true happiness. Thanks for joining me, Everyday Tales Audio, for today's story on Everyday Tales Audio. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel to keep following along with more heartfelt journeys to come. See you in the next story.